Welcome to Frank and Upfront Live, an audio file for audiophiles. Today is Monday, March 20th, 2023. I am your host, Mr. Franklin. Welcome to all of you joining me on YouTube. Welcome to all of you joining me on PodBean. Welcome. Um, I just want to say that we're going to be here for the next couple hours or so. 2 hours, we might barely go over 2 hours, but roughly in the ballpark of 2 hours. And I just want to give a special New Year shout outs. Today, for those who don't know, is Universal New Year. You have two New Years, right? January 1st is the one that you're most familiar with. That's the International Business New Year. And then you have the Universal New Year, which is, it should coincide with the spring equinox. Well, the spring equinox is different. It isn't always on March 20th. Some years it falls on the 21st. Some years it falls on the 22nd. So it fluctuates even within each hemisphere, Even within the hemisphere, it fluctuates between the 20th and 22nd or so. But for the most part, it's ideally around the 20th, the 21st. But this year in particular, it falls on the 20th. So today is the first of 2 days of the year, in which we'll see 12 equal days of sunlight and nighttime. And what a perfect time for New Year than the spring equinox. Now, there are two hemispheres on Earth. Even on the flat Earth, you'll see that there's a northern hemisphere and the southern hemisphere. Hold on. Okay, as I was saying, so there are two hemispheres, northern and southern. Here in the northern hemisphere, the spring equinox takes place on March 20th. But in the southern hemisphere, March 20th is not the spring equinox. It is the autumn equinox. The spring equinox actually takes place on September 20th. However, for whatever reason, so their new year is September 20th. Ours is March 20th. But so then it's even so it's still not the universal new year. That's a word I use to explain where I'm coming from. It's not really the universal new year, and there may never be one. Or there might only be two universal new years based on the hemispheres. But just so you know where I'm coming from, I call it the universal new year. So, no, I'm not late. I know that January 1st is considered to be New Year. I don't believe it's New Year. I don't celebrate Gregorian New Year. This is my New Year. This is the New Year of those who are in nature, the New Year of the spring equinox. A time of revival, a time to be reset, a time to renew your energy for the coming year. Time to eat the best of foods, the healthiest of foods, and to only be surrounded by positive people in your life. And if you're feeling up to it, you might even want to fast. This should be even a time of fasting, to fast, to cleanse and get ready. Get your mind, body, and soul renewed for the new year. So even though we observe January 1st, because we have jobs, because we have computers, that's we have phones and computers that is set to reset on January 1st. Because of that, you can observe the International Business New Year, but you must consider celebrating the universal New Year, the natural New Year, the real New Year, the agricultural New Year. Think about that for a moment. Now, that's not the main topic. Today's topic is the importance. Hold on, I'm sorry. Today's topic is the purpose of going through phases. Yes, I'm sorry. We're going to go ahead and end this for a moment. This is on PodBean, of course. There's an error on PodBean. I don't know why PodBean does that. I put the right thing and they still send me back something that is not accurate. I'm going to mute the mic for a moment. Do bear with me, please. Okay, welcome back. I've made the changes. It was an easy fix. So now that to avoid confusion, making sure we're on the same page here. The purpose of going through phases. That is the topic of today's show. And with that said, we'll take a break right here. And when we come back, we'll be discussing more as to where I'm going with this topic. And I hope you'll join me then. Keep it locked and Frank and Upfront. Welcome back to Frank and Upfront Live, an audio file for audiophiles. This week's topic, the purpose of going through different phases. Now, when you're younger, when you're just about coming of age, 16, 17, 18, maybe even 14, 15, basically between 14 and I would think 21 or so, 25, 27 even, people go through different phases. Do you feel that, maybe you might be feeling a bit loud and rebellious? You want to dye your hair purple? It's more prevalent in females than in males, but males go through it too. You want to kind of frizz your hair out, make it all frizzy. You want to grow a beard, shave the beard, grow the mustache, grow the beard without the mustache, grow the mustache without the beard, grow both, have none at some point. Right? Yeah, man. So, girls, they would maybe dye their hair purple, green, hair color that people don't naturally have, or hair color that people at that age don't have, like gray. They want the granny hag appearance, like what pretty young girl would want gray hair like an old hag, but they do. They do what they do. They experiment. They go through phases. Yeah, it's called going through phases. And there's some people who are even bi-curious during that age. They're not gay, especially the females. They have the liberty of kissing a girl and there's nothing that comes out of it. So they're a little bit bi-curious. And they want to experiment and see if they're lesbians. And they might go through a little girl phase for a while. But then ultimately they settle down and they marry their husbands. And they enjoy sleeping with men. And the lesbian tendencies never return, ever throughout their whole lives. That was just a phase they were going through. And it's a natural part of growing up. It's a natural part of being young, going through phases. Very natural part. It's a natural part of going through phases. It's a natural part of the coming of age experience. But then, by a certain age, you find yourself and you stop going through phases. When you're going through these phases, the people around you, your parents, aunts and uncles, and then grandparents, they're worried. What are you turning into? Are you turning into some kind of freak? Why are you dyeing your hair purple? Why are you wearing contacts? Why are you dressed like that? And I'm like, you know what? Those people have big egos. They forget their boyhood days or their girlhood, childhood days, or when they were, you know, going through phases themselves. They forget those days. Anybody who's experimenting, if you're between 14 and 24, maybe 27, that's natural at your age. Many of these people are also bitter and jealous and they long for their glory days. They long for it, they yearn for it, they burn for it. And they want to take it out on the young people by controlling them. And so all these concerns that they so-called have is just a means of control. They're not concerned, they're controlling. They're concerned that they can't get to control you, that you're going up so fast and they can't get to control you. Soon they won't be able to talk to you or tell you anything. And they won't be able to control you, and they'll slip right through their fingers and serve them right. Because they have no right to try to control another person in the first place. Each of us are individuals. I am me, and you are you. You can't be me and be you at the same time. So therefore, you can't think for me. And if you can't respect me for being me and going through what I'm going through and allow me to go through it in peace, or at the very least support me while I'm going through it, instead of being embarrassed or angry or upset, or think that I'm annoying for me going through a phase, then that is that first red flag of toxic traits that this person has within themselves. And if they can't respect you when you're 14 and going through phases, temporary phases, then how they can respect you when you're 30 and married? They'll always see you as the little boy, the little girl. They never come to terms with you being an adult, and they never respect you. And it's going to show more and more obviously the more you let them come around you. Because once again, what you're going through is temporary. They're losing their heads over something temporary. You're going through a phase. They don't remember when they were kids. You see what I mean? Anybody who knows anything about, or I should say, anybody who remembers their childhood would know that when an adolescent or young adult goes through a phase, that phase is temporary. That phase does not last more than a couple years or so, and sometimes you're lucky if it only lasts for a week. As long as they're not going off on a wide tangent, and then that doesn't mean they're bad people. Them going through phases doesn't mean they're bad people, as long as they don't go off on a tangent, and oftentimes they don't. And oftentimes, they find themselves right back around to themselves. Whatever happens, the phase naturally wears off, or they had a bad phase experience. And being that way is not quite as they thought it would be. Because what causes one to go through a phase? You know, when people go to school, they go to a melting pot of social and cultural differences, and they rub shoulders with other people from other backgrounds. And you may sit next to a girl in the class that you like. You might like that they wear a certain sweater or have a certain backpack, and you might try and get that sweater or backpack for yourself because your friend has it, especially in middle school, especially in the 8th grade, and especially among girls. Boys go through phases too, obviously, but there's more like the action figures that they play with. I like Power Rangers. My friend may get to like Power Rangers because I like it. I might have a Goku backpack. He gets a Goku backpack. You see what I mean? So phases are inspired by the people we like. We think they're cool. And sometimes phases sadly come to an end when we realize that those people either weren't cool, there's something not cool about them. And we're like, holy shit, is that the way all of you guys are? Is that the way this phase is? This thing I'm trying, are all of you people who are into this, are all of you like that? Let me not be that way no more. And then you lose interest in that phase and you move on to the next cool thing, or you probably revert back to your true self for a while or permanently or something, right? So that's how phases even begin and that's how they end. Or sometimes they go on their natural course and you're like, you know what? I wake up one day, I realize, you know what? That's just not even me, bro. I remember I used to be this way. Let me go back to being this way. That's not even me. But even though you stop exaggerating as it relates to practicing that new fad that you think is so cool, the exaggerated version of the phase may come to an end, but you may not realize it left a little bit of itself in the imprint of your personality, and it might come up every now and again. It might just come up. You might not even know. You might not even really be conscious of where that comes from. You never used to always do that. Now you're doing it. But guess what? You picked it up from a phase in life that you were going through at the time. That was a phase you were going through. And even though you discontinued the practice of the exaggerated version of that phase, you were not conscious of the fact that the phase you went through left a little imprint of itself within your personality. And so when the moment arises, or when the moment arises at some point, that imprint of the phase, of each imprint of each phase helps to build your character, and they come out at different times when needed. And you're not conscious of where that comes from but those phases were training you how to behave in certain situations. And if you were conscious, you might have tried to stop it. That's why it's unconscious. It's meant to build your character and help train you to learn how to behave in certain situations. Whether the influence that inspired the phase is a friend at school or your favorite character on TV, that person is to help train you to go through, to handle whatever it is that you may go through that requires you to be that person in that moment. And so our personalities isn't just one person, it's a collection of different micro expressions that we pick up along the way from different influence sources. And as such, at the very core of all of that lies our true personality. That doesn't change. The different phases doesn't erode away at your true personality. Your true personality is at the very core. That doesn't change. The core never changes. But the branches can pick up a little here and pick up a little more there and so forth and so on. At the core, you will always be yourself, and rightfully so. But the branches of your personality would pick up a little here, pick up a little there to help mold your complete personality that you need to survive in this life. And that is the purpose of you going through phases. But you have to remember that phases are temporary. At least the exaggerated version of it is temporary. The version where it's new and you're exaggerating it, it is temporary. It's a phase, it's a fad. It's trending right now, it's cool right now. It too shall pass. When it does, it will leave a little fragment within your character that you may not necessarily be conscious of immediately, but it will come out and you will hear it, or someone else might hear it, a third party might hear it, and then they're like, hey, you sound, the way you said it just now, you sound just like Batman. So, and they're like, hey, I heard it too, yeah. Oh, I know I heard it that time. Well, guess what? Maybe you used to watch Batman as a kid and you liked his personality, and you pick up some of his personality. And the way you do things now is very much, especially when you're being a protagonist and a vigilante, and something unjust may be happening around you. You don't know how else to act. You never had any other positive male role model, so the only way you know how to act is to act like Batman in that moment. And that's fine. Some might judge you and say, oh, you're going through a phase. You watch too much TV. Who are they to judge? He's the only positive male role model you may have possibly had. Remember that. Do you? You don't know how else to be until you learn your true personality. You don't know how else to be but to be inspired. But to act like the person who inspired you. You see, it's not just living people who can raise you. Sometimes it's characters who can raise you too. Sometimes your parents are busy working odd hours and odd shifts that the TV end up raising you and you end up taking on their character. And the person you are today has been largely contributed to by the character on TV whom you admire. And that's fine. As long as you never forget the core of who you really are, your core character. As long as you never let that other character overtake your core character, the core of your being. as long as you're still being yourself regardless. Because ultimately, you are good enough. Ultimately, you maybe need the help to learn how to act in certain situations, but ultimately, you don't need, really and truly. You are cool enough and you're good enough and you don't need. You don't need those additions to your character. You may need training to know how to act if you didn't have any good role models, but you don't need additions to your character because you are good enough and you matter. You're important. And if you have to change into somebody else to make other people like you, then those people are toxic. You don't need them around you. It's not their place to make you try and change. Be your true self. Yes, go through phases. Yes, absolutely. Go through phases, but ultimately be yourself. There has to be a point where you come right back around full circle to being yourself. And you must know that you're good enough and that you matter. Your voice matters. No one has the right to try and change you, and no one has the right to try and. That also, when I say that, I also mean to say as well, no one has the right to try and tell you to not go through a phase while you're naturally going through a phase. That's a part of them not trying to change you too. It's both. They shouldn't try and change you for being yourself, and they also shouldn't try and change you when you're going through phases either. Because have you ever noticed the same people who saw you quiet and minding your business and come as the devil to interrupt and try and change your character? That when you do try and change, they're still not happy? Have you ever noticed that? Exactly. That's why they must mind their business and leave you alone. They must just mind their business and leave you alone. Because they still wouldn't be happy regardless. And they're so egotistical that if they thought they could change you once, they could change you again. But you don't march to the beat of their own drum. Be who you are and do what comes naturally. You feel like going through a phase, go through a phase. You watch too much TV, it's a sign of immaturity. Grow up already. Shaming tactics. Go through that phase if necessary. What if we never had any positive male role models who don't know how else to act? And by the way, we never resonate with people who are not similar to our character. It is unnatural to resonate with people who are characters who are not even remotely similar to our character. So if we're going through a phase, that character is maybe similar to our character or an exaggeration of our character. We already naturally had that type already. Otherwise, they would not resonate. We already naturally have the general character type. The phase is just an exaggeration of what is out there that we picked up along the way. You see what I mean? The phase is similar or an exaggeration of what was already out there that we picked up along the way. But that which was already out there resonated with us in ways that it would not have resonated with others because they don't have that general type of character to resonate with in the first place. They have their own type, and someone within that type will inspire them, same as how someone within your type inspired you. So everything is not for everybody. So you already have that type. The character inspired you to exaggerate your type and learn more about yourself. And that is the point. The point is to learn about yourself, especially if you truly grew up without positive role models coming from members of your own gender. Say, for example, I couldn't look to my father. My father wasn't absent. He was there, but he wasn't a good male role model. I don't want to be like my father. Honestly, I thought my father's boss and the boss's friends and them were cooler than him. Honestly. My uncle, one of them, lived and worked in another town. So I don't see him very often. And my other uncles who live in town, nobody want nothing to do with them because, once again, they're very bad role models. They live in town, but they're bad role models. Right? Dancehall artists like Cartel Movado, Idonia, Beanie Man, Bounty Killer, they're closer to my age, but and they're local. Yeah, they are local. They're Jamaicans. Like I am a Jamaican, so we're all local, and they're a local influence on the culture and even the character of many of my peers. But for me personally, I don't regard them as positive male role models. Jamaican television is largely American. You think it's not true? It's true, you know. Jamaican television is largely American with the exception of a few local programs. However, Jamaican radio is more local. Television is Americanized with the exception of a few programs, but the radio is more local. But even on radio, I don't regard the dancehall artists who sing about guns and shooting as any positive male role model. So who do I turn to for inspiration? A Jamaican journalist and talk show host named Wilmot Motty Perkins, who is the inspiration for this podcast. Who is my role model? May he continue to rest in peace. So, Motty resonated with me because of the similarity of our personalities and our interest in learning different languages and linguistics and all those things. So even though Motty is even older than my father, or was older than my father, for whatever reason, he resonates with me as a young man, growing up in Jamaica, looking for local role models in a situation for which I had no positive male role models. And I thought Motty was the best example. Not perfect, of course not perfect, but the best in that time. And that's what I went with. And the most popular. Motty lost his only child, but a father figure to the nation. For that reason alone, he's deserving. And though he was offered the national honors, he didn't want it. But he's deserving it nonetheless. Just because he didn't want it doesn't mean he doesn't deserve it. So, that's an example of what I'm talking about. Your role models resonate with you, oftentimes more than the people within your own local environment. Though not one of my contemporaries, Monty was a better role model than the local dancehall singers, the Cartel, the Mavada, and all these other ones, Beanie Man singing about, well, not Beanie Man personally, but like Mavada singing about guns and all those things. And and Cartel too, and where's Cartel now? They live the life they preach, and where are they now? They live the life that they sing about in real life. They actually practice what they preach. Where are they now? What kind of role model tells the kids? Majority of their audience members are school children, school teenagers, and they're telling them about guns and shooting, and wonder why there's a paradigm shift that would see us becoming more violent than we were in times gone by. More violent than we were in times gone by. Monty wouldn't resonate with me if we didn't have similar personalities. And as such, whoever, if it wasn't even going to be Monty Perkins, whoever it was going to be, that person would just as much be required to have similar personality to myself in order to resonate, even to begin with. As for who else in the public eye that I could have turned to, I don't know. No one really comes to mind. Cliff Hughes, Ian Boyne, whoever it is. I guess those ones would come close, and they have inspired me. Or someone not local. Just because they don't resonate with the culture doesn't mean that you and them don't have similar personalities. So it would have to be someone more local, someone on television. I told you already. Majority of our television is not local; it's Americanized. So I turn to radio for local people who resonate with Jamaican culture, and then I would turn to television now for foreign people who have similar personalities but who may not necessarily resonate with the local culture. And so it doesn't matter if he's a pale white dude from Winnipeg, Canada, who inspires you. As long as he's being a positive influence on your life and he's not leading you astray, that's all that matters. It doesn't matter if they're decades older than me, like Morty was, or if they are not the same race or nationality as myself. Like, say, for example, Kevin from the Royal We, who's not Jamaican. he's, he's white from California. See what I mean? It doesn't matter. As long as they're being a positive role model, as long as they resonate and we have similar personalities or I've had similar experiences, same as me and Kevin have had similar experiences dealing with narcissistic siblings. And even my own parents in my case. So he resonates. I know he speaks the language. He gets it, man. Because we've been through it. So I listen to Kevin. But understand something. Phases are temporary, and any good person who means you well would allow you to go through the phase without interfering, or at the very least, they'll support you if they see you having a warm time, or if you approach them for help. But they wouldn't try and change you, and they wouldn't feel embarrassed, and they wouldn't think that you're embarrassing yourself by not being yourself. All of that sounds narcissistic to me. With the knowledge of the understanding of phases and why they exist and what causes them and why we go to them and how long they last, we perhaps won't feel so embarrassed when people are going through phases. In a culture like Jamaica where there's plenty of stigma attached, people will feel embarrassed at a young person going through phases. They will feel like they're disowning their own culture and all these things, and they're not acting their age, they're acting several years older than their age, they're forced wiping and this and that and all these things within our culture that's so toxic. And all those are rooted in negative stigma. And we must rid our culture of those stigmas if we are to move forward. The kids will end up hating you for that. You don't support them. You just want to shut them down. They will hate you for that. You understand me? It's either you support them or you shut up and leave them alone, let them go through it on their own. They are likely to figure it out on their own than you are to figure it out because you don't fully understand it yourself. They don't understand it and you don't understand it and they know they can't turn to you. You're better off staying all the way. They will hate you. And if you don't want that to happen, stay out the way. Let them figure it out on their own. If you leave them to their own devices without fully abandoning them, one day when they're older, when they understand, they will come around. But if you also, if all you do is judge them and stigmatize them, they will despise you for it. And you will wonder why. Suddenly, all of a sudden, you will develop amnesia and you will wonder why they hate you because you don't regard yourself as doing anything wrong. And that's not true. So, the first step to ending the stigma of shame of young people going through phases in life is the understanding that phases are temporary. You fail them when you fail to provide a positive male role model. They know, even if not consciously, then certainly subconsciously, they know the people around them are no good. You fail, excuse me, you fail to provide them with a positive role model and get upset when they find a positive role model regardless. Because now you're competing with the TV characters or the radio personality because you feel like you can't measure up. By the way, did I ever mention that none of my parents liked Morty? I'd like to welcome Liz White into the studio. Welcome, welcome. None of my parents liked Morty. I wonder why. Very interesting. Okay, Liz says hello, just listening, and then she leaves a heart or a medal. Thank you, Liz. Thank you very much. So, going through different phases of life, finding positive role models to help mold your character. Let's talk about it. So then, the people who are supposedly your caregivers do not provide positive role models in general. Get upset when you find a positive role model on your own, and then try and compete with the positive role model. Try to level up. Then you find, historically enough, you find that they go through phases too, as they adjust their personality to try and become more like the people whom you admire. And then they fall short and they realize that's not even them at all. And it only makes them more embittered. More infuriating, more infuriated, I should say. They only become more embittered. You watch them go through different phases. The role model was meant for your sake, and they end up competing with them by following or mimicking the people you admire. And when they're not even being inspired by them, they don't like them. They're only mimicking them to get your attention. And when it's obvious that they can't be that way, and you still are, you still admire the genuine article regardless, they get upset. And it only shows up when they do that. It only show up more of their botoism. They should have stayed being their true selves or just left you alone. At least with us now, when we're young, it's helping to mold us. They're already molded. They're already who they are. So when they do it, they're not being inspired, they're mimicking. When we do it, we're being molded. So it becomes a part of our personality, even though it shouldn't take over our personality. That is the difference. You see what I mean? They're doing it for all the wrong reasons, and you're doing it for all the right reasons. So then they become the villains of your picture. They were already the villains of your picture. They become twice as much the villains of your picture, twice as antagonistic. That's a red flag for me. That to me is just evil at that point. It is to me. To me, it's evil. I'm not overreacting here because phases are temporary. You are supposed to exaggerate, go through the exaggeration phase of overdoing the character. Then it dies a natural death where it's just a fad, it dies down quietly. But then you don't realize that it left behind a small fragment of itself within you still that will resurface when necessary. And that all of the people who inspired you left behind a little fragment of themselves within your personality that will resurface at the appropriate or accurate moment. So for me, it was some comic book characters, some anime characters, it was Monty Perkins, it was some school teachers, couple of school teachers who molded me when I was growing up, who showed me who provided for me a positive example of a male role model as a young man at the time. From mannerism to speech to dress code, everything. They're there to teach us when we are empty pages, when we haven't been written in yet. We're books, but we're empty pages though. We haven't been written in yet, and they write in them. And at the same time that you are being inspired and being impressionable, be careful who writes on your empty pages, because a bad role model will lead you astray. Be very careful who writes in your pages. Be very careful who you follow. But then again, me saying so is redundant because you're going to follow your personality. My brother, the only full blooded sibling I will ever have, my brother, he likes Cartel and Beanie Man and Movado and all those characters because his personality is the polar opposite of mine. I am more linguistic and into the research and study of sociology and political science and all those things. And he is more into the dancehall and the ragamuffin and the slackness and all these um, more thuggish elements within our culture. So his personality gravitates to Cartel and Movado and Beanie Man and all those ones. My personality gravitates more to journalists on TV or radio. My personality naturally gravitated to role models who were more like myself, people who are more studious and all that kind of thing. And his personality naturally gravitated to people who are more thuggish and ragamuffin and all the kind of things. And when we were both teenagers, people thought that I would settle down and get married and start a family early, and he would be out there playing the field and having lots of girlfriends, um, and just using them and sleeping with them and ditching them and breaking their hearts. Come to find out now in our adult lives, he's the one who got married at 23 and has a kid. I am still at 35, not married and don't have any kids, and I'm the one playing the well. I'm the one who have um, several lovers. Now, do I, because of my personality compared to his, there's one thing that they write about. I wouldn't, even if I end up doing what they thought that my brother would be doing, I'm still myself regardless, so I don't break their hearts and hurt them. I don't do that. I managed to pull off having several lovers without committing to them and without breaking their hearts. I'm very honest about my intentions, and that comes with my personality. My brother, on the other hand, if marriage didn't save him and he ended up doing what I'm doing now, or what they predicted he would do, he wouldn't be as kind as I am. He wouldn't be as patient as I am. So he would break their hearts. He would hurt the girls. I am not doing that. I do what I do out of necessity, but I'm very transparent. And if they end up rejecting me because of that, then it's no loss to me. I find somebody else. But my principles of integrity is such that I will never abandon my personality for a hookup. Never. So you see how we differ, and how, because of our personalities, I naturally gravitate to journalists like Mutty Perkins, and my brother naturally gravitated to dancehall artists like Beanie Man, Mafado, Cartel, Bounty Killer, right? You see what I mean? So me telling people, be careful who you choose is a moot point. They will choose who they choose. All you have to do is respect the nature of your personality and allow yourself to only be inspired by people who resonate with that personality. And you'll be fine. You'll be on the right path. We take a break right here, and when we come back, I'll be wrapping up with my final thoughts, and I hope you'll join me then. Keep it locked on Frank and Upfront. Welcome back to Frank and Upfront Live, an audiophile for audiophiles. This week's topic, the purpose of going through phases. And now to wrap up the program with my final thoughts, I just want to reiterate the main points of this show. People, especially on a cultural level where I come from in Jamaica and throughout the entire Caribbean, there weren't very many good role models, and especially good male role models. So when people see young people and teenagers and adolescents going through phases, they don't know that the phases are temporary. And even if it never occurred to them that the phase could possibly be temporary. And because they don't know that, and even if they did know, they still don't know how long that temporary phase would last for. It could last 5 years, and that could be a long time for them. So it is so aggravating to watch you go through this phase that they feel embarrassed that they didn't do enough to help you discover yourself. And they see you taking on another personality and becoming somebody who you're not. They don't understand the meaning or purpose of your journey. And as such, they try to discourage you, and they use shaming language. And worst of all, the source of your inspiration may not be someone local. It might be someone on television, but that's not my fault that television in Jamaica is not very Jamaicanized. That's not my fault. Where are the Jamaican animators that are making Jamaican cartoons? To draw some Jamaican superheroes and Jamaican comic books. That's not my fault. Right? Now, if I was still living there, I might be able to change that. But because there's no support group in Jamaica for people like me, the brain drain happened, and when I got to leave, I took the opportunity and I left. And that's what brain drains do. And so now nothing much has changed because the people who actually want something different are no longer living there. And that's how brain drain happened. But it's not my fault that they aren't in the local programs or local superheroes or cartoons. And we have enough athletes to inspire superheroes of our own. So it's not like we're lacking creativity. It's just that, maybe they don't think it's a worthy venture. There's only very few local programs on television. So I had to go to the radio for local inspiration. And the very few local programming on television is not even scripted. It's mostly news shows, and those are unscripted, which is similar to radio anyways. And then all the scripted shows, with the exception of Royal Palm Estate, which is local, are otherwise Americanized. That's not my fault. But they see you watching TV and copying the characters on TV, being inspired by them, thinking they're really cool characters. They get upset. They think you're throwing stone behind you and denouncing your own culture for foreign culture. And no one likes that. You think that foreign culture is cooler than ours, we're not good enough for you. And once again, I reiterate, no one likes that. No one likes that. They try and copy the characters. You are still young and impressionable, so you're being molded by the characters. They're just copying the characters to steal their attention because they're competing with them, which is a very big red flag of narcissism and mental illness on the part of the people who are doing that, who are making a mockery of you simply coming of age. Leave people alone. So, red flag. Big red flag. The people competing with your role models who didn't even provide a positive role model to you in the first place. The same people who didn't provide a positive role model are competing with a positive role model you now found for yourself. They can't just leave you alone to save their lives. Truly, buto, nigga them. Truly, buto. You ever say buto? That's the best example of a buto. Number two, each person who inspired you at some point helps to mold your character because phases have different phases, sub-phases within the phase. So the first phase of the phase is your exaggerated impression of the character who inspired you. And then as that fad dies down and you seek the next best thing, that character left a little fragment of its personality within your character. And as such, as you go along as you go along throughout your journey, each person who inspires you does the same thing. The beginning of the phase is exaggerated. The end of the phase will see you taking on a little fragment of their personality within your greater character. And so, therefore, each person who inspired you left a little fragment of their personality in your character. Each person. And so, if you have enough, by the time you reach to a place where you've had enough or you've had sufficient amounts of inspiration sources, you may at some point realize that each person left behind a little fragment of themselves within your personality, embedded within your personality. It won't be obvious until something happens to trigger that side of you to come out. Then it will come out. But each of them left behind a little fragment of themselves embedded within your personality. And it's up to you whether or not you're going to allow that to change the very core of your character, depending on how strong you are. Because it shouldn't change the core of your character. You're still you regardless. But it's okay to be inspired, but don't let it take over your character. Each person who helps to mold your character is only developing. Each person who you thought was cool, who was an inspiration, who you copied, or whatever it is, was only helping to build your character. Your character is already complete. The core of your character is already complete by itself. But each of your inspiration sources were only simply adding to your character, adding to your already complete character, being a positive role model, adding to your character, amplifying your character that's already complete on its own. So then, therefore, if you allow them to take over your entire character, that's probably a sign of weakness, and you may need to work on that. By the time you're 25, going through different phases should have ended, and you should already have some strong idea as to who you really are at the core of your being. If you don't know that and you're still going through phases, it may be a sign of immaturity or weakness on your part. Because between 14 and 25, you should have already done that. Past 25, you should have a strong sense of identity. And if you don't, it's a sign of weakness or immaturity on your part. And you may need to look into that, but whatever you do, don't ignore it. But at the same time, however, who am I to judge? I don't know the meaning of your journey. It's like, for example, the parent who never been to Disney World when they were kids, but when they have kids of their own at 35 or 40, you can't judge that parent for having a great time at Disney World because they never had that chance when they were kids. They never went to an amusement park, so they're going to go to Disney World and go on the rides and have a great time. And who am I to judge them? Better late than never. So because I don't know the meaning of your journey, because I don't know what you've been through, if you continue going through different phases past 25, as much as how you may need to look into that, it is not my place to judge. You might be a late starter. You might be battling arrested development. I don't know. I won't judge you. If I can't support you, if I don't know the answer myself, the very least I can do is respect you enough to not judge you or try and change you. But whatever it is, however, always remember that phases are temporary and they only change the branches of your character, which is your different personalities within the character. They only change the branches by adding to your character. That's already complete on its own without changing the very core of your character lying at the center. Let me say it again. They only change the branches without changing the core, and they change the branches by adding to your character that's already complete, but the core of who you are is preserved, or at least it should be. And if it's not, you may need to look into that or maybe get some help for that, because that's a very strong sign of weakness on your part. It's a very strong sign of self-loathing. Why do you not like yourself? Why do you think other characters, some fictional, some real, are cooler than your true self, that you need to get rid of your core character? Get some help for that, find a support group, and learn to love yourself. You are complete by yourself. You are enough. Going through phases is just something you do when we're kids, It's not something that we use to define our true selves in our adult lives. It's something we do as kids. It's temporary. And it has its time and place. It has its purpose. And it's very necessary. Very necessary. But there's a toxic extreme to it that we should avoid. Don't let inspiration of others and don't let your search for a a positive role model, I should say. Of course, I keep saying male role model because I'm a male, but in general, positive role model in general. Don't let your quest or your search for that positive role model turn into self-loathing. That's the toxic element to it. You should really be careful of. Remember, always remember, you could be inspired all you want. It's very necessary and very important part of your upbringing. But always remember that the core of your character is always good enough on its own and it is complete. And that whoever inspires you is not your completion, but rather the addition of your character. And that they only change the branches but not the core. The core is or should be preserved. Next week's topic: what is wrong with social media? I hope you'll join me then. I am Mr. Franklin. This has been Frank and Upfront.